Welcome to the podcast, Entrepreneur Perspectives, building and protecting your business one podcast at a time, a CatSource family production. In this episode, we discuss SportsEpreneur, football training camp, and Twitter. This is a Q&A freestyle episode, which is at the core of what we do, helping you build and protect your business. And in this episode, we get into the questions from our audience, including our clients and the business owners we chat with on a consistent basis, and you, our listeners. We hope the perspectives we discuss help drive new opportunities for your business. This episode gets into 3 frequently asked questions we get. Number 1, why does SportsEpreneur.com exist? Number 2, what is a sports topic that ties into business today? And number 3, how can someone use Twitter to help their business? And with that, let's get right into this episode. The first question we're going to answer that we're getting a lot is, why does SportsEpreneur.com exist, and what exactly is SportsEpreneur? SportsEpreneur originally came about as I was constantly testing out ways to create content around sports. I wanted a sports blog of some sort for the longest time. I didn't know what to write about. I'm a fan of the Bills, the Sabres, the Ohio State Buckeyes, and just sports in general, Cleveland Indians. I mean, just so many different teams out there. And what I didn't want to do is just replicate what already existed. I mean, there is already a lot of content around. I mean, especially when you talk about the Bills or the Buckeyes. I mean, there is just a huge following of both of those teams, and I didn't want to create content around it. Plus, I didn't want to create with the ESPNs of the world or the Sporting News and all those types of publications and websites. And it was just something I still wanted. So I tested it and had a few different small micro sites that I was messing with, and just wasn't feeling it. So I kept on going. And during the time I was building this business back in 2011 time frame, I was reading sports and business. So anything related to sports and anything related to business and entrepreneurialism, I was reading about it constantly. And what came to me is sports and business together. But at the same time, and as this business was growing, I was using a lot of analogies with our sales team, with our business team, talking business, but using sports to create the parallel to the same thing, and simplifying the conversations. And I know people do that a lot, and it can get old, it can get stale when you create these sports and business analogies. But it felt like some of these analogies were pretty good, and people were commenting on them. And then I thought to myself one day, I was like, I need to write about that. And so what I did, and I've talked about this before on Shane Larson's podcast, for example, the Game Time Guru, and we have that podcast on our Entrepreneur Perspectives podcast as well. It was about perspective, and it was about a salesperson that was going out there and was getting really frustrated because he felt like, these people aren't giving me the chance. They don't think I can help them out. And I said, they don't, because you're young in the business, you've never worked with them before, and they have no reason to trust you. So you have to earn the chance. You have to earn the chance. You have to earn the opportunity to do it. And so you need to change their perspective. But right now, their perspective is that you cannot help them. And so what we wrote about was 2014 was Ohio State when they beat Alabama. No one thought they could beat Alabama. I'm not going to get in the story. I'll even link down to the bottom in the show notes. But the point was, everyone thought the SEC was going to beat the Big Ten, and Ohio State couldn't win. And then what happens? Of course, Ohio State goes out, beats Alabama, and wins the national championship the next time when they played Oregon in the championship game. But the point was, they had to get that opportunity. So the narrative was they couldn't beat Alabama until they got themselves the opportunity. And if they lost that, then, well, you know what? The narrative would have stuck. Well, what happened? They beat Alabama. They won the game. They changed the perspective. So that's what I told the salesperson. This is what they need to do. They need to go out there and they need to earn that. So putting those together, I just said, you know what? I'm going to write the article. So I just started writing. And then when that happened, a ton of other ideas started coming along. And that was the birth of SportsEpreneur. There was no agenda behind it besides just creating content of something that I enjoyed writing about and talking about. And it kind of cleared my mind. I always talk about being creative. I think it helps you in the nuances of the business world, which is just, there's so much going on, and there's paperwork, and there's growing the business, there's ups and downs, the roller coaster ride that we always talk about. And that's where SportsEpreneur really started. And what it became is just content that we give, just constantly, what can we do to help people? What can we do to help get them thinking differently? And at the same time, it helps us out. So there was nothing to it. There was no charging for it. There was no cost to it. It was just content that we wanted to give. We like talking about sports and we like talking about business. So why can't we talk about those two things together? And what was fascinating is at the same time, I was getting a lot of, let's say inner thinking going on. When it came to the insurance industry that I was in, that the communication in insurance was just terrible for many years, and in many respects it still is. No matter what level of insurance you're in, no matter who you're selling to, and you have software, if you're selling to the consumers, if you're selling to the advisors, whatever it might be, I thought the communication, the marketing that existed was really poor. So why not create content that might be interesting to people in those industries, and maybe they want to talk to you about that. It's exactly what happened. So people weren't calling me up and say, hey, I want to talk to you about your insurance business per se, because that's not that exciting. Now, I always thought that wasn't the most exciting thing for other people to want to talk to you about. But what happened is those people wanted to talk to us about our SportsEpreneur.com product, our blogs, our, anything related. What are we doing? What is that all about? So we were getting conversations and meetings about that. And they said, well, what else do you do? Oh, by the way, you do insurance. Well, I need to talk to you about that as well. So the SportsEpreneur became a client driver, if you will, for people to engage with us and have conversations with us. And so that was kind of like the next level stuff. It didn't start out that way for sure, but it became a lot of that. And it became oh, wow, people want to talk to us about that. And SportsEpreneur was the catalyst behind it. And that's why I always tell other people in their businesses, yes, be specific, talk about your business, have an understanding of your business, give content out specifically about your business, but then what else relates to your business? What is content that you can create that then brings in an audience that they'll be interested in talking to you? And oh, by the way, you also sell this too. And I think something else that's missed a lot, I talked about it before real quick, was the being creative. I think you have to do something creative in your business, no matter what it is. I don't know if it's drawing pictures or doing videos or music or whatever that might be. I think it's really cool if you can create something. And what that is to me, at least to me, and maybe not to everybody, is it's fun. And I want to have fun doing the business that I do. And SportsEpreneur is a fun thing for us. I don't think of a lot of the stuff that we do as work. Yeah, there's no doubt we're doing taxes or filling out forms and doing paperwork. That's not fun, but it's part of the process, so you kind of live with it. But where can we actually find the true fun and engaging things? This is the stuff that I want to think about and do. Like, if I go to a sporting event, I could just watch the sporting event, but I could also maybe pull something out of it that I can learn and use for business. I actually had a guy call me up once. He's like, wow, man, my wife gets on me for watching sports. He's like, you're a genius because you get to create content and watch sports. It's almost like you entered the sports world for your business without actually entering the sports world. So I always thought that was funny when that individual said that to me. So sports and entrepreneurialism was always a passion of mine. I read about it a ton. I was like, let's put these two things together and create content around it. And that's what we did. And that's where SportsEpreneur came from. And we're going to keep creating content around it. What's been interesting is a lot of people who have been in the sports world that play sports at a very high level, or played it in high school, or played in college, or still playing it professionally. They've been drawn to this. And so they've come to us directly and wanted to be on it. And I just say it takes time. It takes a lot of time, and then people will reach out to you and they want to be featured on your blog, or they want to be on your podcast, or they want to learn more about what you're doing, and they think that that's interesting, and that because that's interesting, then they'll want to maybe do business with you. So it absolutely has a way of working out, but more than anything else, it's the creative and it's the fun that you can have behind it. The second question we're going to answer are, what are some things that we're seeing in the sports world that relate to the business world? Things we're noticing in the sports world that relate to the business world is, at this time of year, when we're recording this podcast episode, is training camp for the NFL. And that's going to wind down here pretty soon. One of the big topics you have with training camp every year is Hard Knocks. This year, Hard Knocks and the HBO show is being filmed, is the Cleveland Browns. And it's interesting, we're watching, I think it was the first episode, and Hugh Jackson, who's the coach, and I'm not a huge Hugh Jackson fan. I'm not sure how long he is for that team, but that's up for debate. But he is the coach of the team. He is in charge of that team, and I found it interesting that he was running a session with all of his coordinators and coaches And during that session, he was asking questions about like, what do we think of these styles, of what we're doing, of how we're working with our players and all this. And he's having a conversation with everybody. Todd Haley's the offensive coordinator, used to be at the Pittsburgh Steelers. He's now the offensive coordinator for the Cleveland Browns. And they had a disagreement during this meeting. And, Hugh Jackson definitely opened it up for everybody to talk. And at some point during that conversation, he did make it very clear that this is his team and he will make the decision. And he was very blunt about it. Maybe he went to an extreme way about it, but at the same time, I thought it was important to see that, to where if you're running your group, it is what it is. This is your opportunity. This is your baby. This is the business that you built. This is the division that you built, and you're going to sink or swim based on your ideas. And so you're letting everybody know that absolutely you're going to take input, but at the same time that you're going to make the decisions. And if you make the wrong decisions, it's on you. If you make the right decisions, it's on you as well. And this is how it's going to be. And if someone doesn't want to be a part of it, not to say like go leave, that's an extreme way to be. But this is what we're doing. This is the strategies that we're going to run with. Let's talk about it. Maybe you can convince me otherwise, and by all means, if you can convince me otherwise, we'll do that. So I think it's important to understand that if you are in charge, if you are leading the way, that you have to have the determination to make that stance. And I think I try to do that myself. How we're running our business is say, this is the type of thing that we're running, and help everybody understand, this is the vision that we have, and try to cast that vision and help people along that vision. And that is it, and we might change and we might pivot, and, people might have questions, and by all means, we'll help explain that. But I think a lot of people, including myself, have to do a better job of stating like this is what we're doing, and you're either on that boat or you're not on that boat in a positive and energetic way, and you get behind it and you move forward. So definitely think that's an important piece, and it was interesting to watch in Hard Knocks and pull that conversation from it that they had with Hugh Jackson. The other part of training camp that I find interesting is the up and down ride that it is. For the players, for everybody that is a part of the organization. And I liken it to the business world. It's during maybe a short-term project, because training camp is short-term, but it's a huge part of the season, sometimes overlooked, and we want to focus on the games. But all that stuff starts in the preseason. So if you think about the bad days a player might have, it's no different than a salesperson having a bad day. A receiver might go out there and drop some balls, run some bad routes, not do the blocks, might get yelled at by the coaches. It's, obviously it's not going to be that level when you're in the sales world and you're getting yelled and screamed at like you might be on the field playing football. But at the same time, you're going to have doubt. Doubt's going to creep in. You're going to have bad days, and you're not going to think it's going to go up. But I think that a lot can be taken from the training camp world and the ups and downs that players have on the bad days. And the other thing to take from it is sometimes those bad days add up, and there's a lot of bad days in a row, and next thing you know, the player's getting cut. Maybe not to the extreme of someone getting fired or someone getting let go or someone moving on, but sometimes it's just not the right fit. Sometimes it's not the right place, and maybe you don't fit the culture. Maybe you're not studying hard enough. Maybe you're not working hard enough. Maybe you're not reading enough. A football player, maybe they're just not reading the playbook, or maybe they don't have the fit. They don't fit in with the other players. They don't fit in with the organization. They're having, something personal going on. But whatever it is, it's important to, if you are the player, if you are the salesperson, to find yourself on the right team. Make sure you get on that right organization. If you're not, you have to move on. And I guess, and that's the same for, not I guess, but that is it too for a business. If you have the wrong salespeople on your organization, sending the wrong message, doing the wrong branding for your company, then maybe it's best for both sides to part ways and to move on to something different. It's a two-way street. Sometimes it's hard to see that, but I think it's very important part of it. That your sales force and your workforce are huge for your business to grow. No different than the players on the football field. If they don't fit the culture, if they don't have the right attitude and the mental capacity that you're looking for maybe you have an extreme complicated playbook, you got to get the right people on the team. And if not, maybe it's best for everybody if they move on. So training camp, I think, can teach us a lot when it comes to the business world. Definitely Hard Knocks gives you examples of it, but just tune in and watch some practice videos and watch these players getting yelled and screamed at. It's a fascinating time of year for football fans, but I think entrepreneurs, business owners, salespeople, people in the workforce in general can take a lot from it. The third and final question we're going to answer today is all about Twitter. What is Twitter? What is going on with Twitter? And how, most importantly, can you use Twitter for yourself? Twitter is a platform I talk a lot about. One of the main reasons is it was the first social media platform that I got really involved with. I mean, Facebook was out there. From a personal level, I've never been real involved with Facebook. I've done some posting on it. I very, very rarely look at the personal side of Facebook, more use it for business and reading and those types of things, and to learn about new brands and new companies. But going back to Twitter, I think Twitter's got pulls in two different directions. One, it is so polarizing and there's a lot of negative on there, but at the same time, there's so much positive. There's so many ways you can connect on Twitter. I mean, it is just conversations happening all over the place, and you just don't get that in a lot of the social media platforms. For as much as people like Instagram, and we like Instagram a lot, the conversations in the actual feed is not even close to what you have on Twitter. Now, you can take conversations on the direct messaging on Instagram to another level, which Twitter does have. That's just been filled with a lot of spam. I'll say this, going off a quick tangent, I think that Twitter DMing has actually improved drastically. There's just way less spam than there used to be. But anyway, going back to Twitter, there's just so many conversations. You can hop in on conversations, and we've written articles about how you can, two people could be having a conversation, or 10 people can be having a conversation, and you can hop into that conversation at any time. But one thing that I do see on Twitter is just a lot of posting. It's a lot of people making comments and not engaging in other people's conversations, or not starting conversations, or not carrying on a conversation. And I think that's one of the biggest issues that I see with Twitter, and people saying, well, I'm not getting a lot from it. Well, that's because what you're doing is you're actually just posting stuff. You're not doing anything with anybody else, and very few people are paying attention. So I think you really have to dive in to Twitter. You can't just make a comment. You can't just post articles. You can't just post your blogs or your videos or anything along those lines. You truly have to engage in it. So what I mean by dive in is you have to engage. So if you see a topic that you want to get into, make comments on it. Make your content valuable, make your content educational, informative, make it entertaining. Do something to get noticed and have genuine conversations. And I think the main way to do that is to get into your audiences, get into like audiences. So if you're a fan of a sports team, for example, join that crowd and engage with it. And what you're going to do is you're going to start building an audience around that. So a lot of people that like the same team that you do are also going to follow you. It's one of the easiest ways you can do it, because when it comes to sports, fans are crazy and they want to engage with people that are like-minded. And that's one way you can do it. But it doesn't have to be sports. We talk a lot about sports on here. It can be anything. If you're into traveling, my goodness, there's so much out there about traveling. If you're into restaurants and food and eating right, if you're into exercising, if you're into cars, if you're into gardening, if you're into just the city that you live in, there's so many different ways. If you're into politics, of course, that's where one of the more polarizing things is. But you can find your way into the less polarizing stuff. But that is the way to do it, and you can build a very large following just engaging with that content. If you take it to the big event, so for example, if there's a big game going to the sports thing, if there's a big game going on for your team, during those 3 hours, let's say, of that game, people from your team are going to be posting content like crazy. And that is a chance for you to have a viral-like post. It happens. I could show you posts that I've done, whether it's not even during a game that I was a fan of. It could have been like during the Golden State Warriors. If you go to my Twitter profile, go to my top of my feed, and I have it pinned up for you so you can see it. But there was this time when Draymond Green was kind of going nuts during the game, and they were blowing out the Cavaliers in the NBA Finals. And obviously tons of people are on Twitter at that time talking about and commenting on the NBA Finals, and Draymond Green was getting in Tristan Thompson's face, and I just kind of took it to I just didn't like his behavior at that time, and you could take it for what you want. You might disagree and say, hey, he's just getting emotional and all that, and that's great. But the point was, I made a comment, and that point, I'm not saying it went viral, but it got a lot of likes, a lot of comments, a lot of retweets, and it still gets people looking at it today, making comments, mostly likes and some retweets here and there on that post. But what the point was is during an event where a lot of people are paying attention to it and they're going to see it. So if you build an audience around sports or around the team that you like, you can absolutely create engagement. Like I said, it doesn't have to be sports. It can be something else. There's a lot of events going on. If it's an event in your industry, a lot of times they'll have hashtags around that event, and you can post and comment during that time, and you will absolutely get engagement. Chats are a good way to do it. They'll have Twitter chats, and for example, if you're into LinkedIn, you want to learn more about LinkedIn, go to hashtag LinkedIn chat, and people are going to be asking questions and answering and responding, and it's an absolutely great way to build an audience out there. You also should post your content. Like I said before, don't just post it, but you also should post it. So if you do articles, post your articles on Twitter. If you have a podcast like we will be doing, we'll post this link on Twitter. If you have images that you like from Instagram, and that's another thing, go off channel. So if you have a post on LinkedIn, if you have a post on Instagram, share the link. You can copy the link and post it on Twitter. But point is, don't just do that. I think too many people are just making their own comments and they're shouting from the rooftop, right? They're posting all of their links, they're posting all of their content, but they're not engaging in anything else that's going on. And it kind of pollutes Twitter. So from my standpoint, I'm annoyed by it because it's polluting a great platform, I think. I'm not saying don't do that. I just think that it has to be a happy medium. I also think a lot of people are on Twitter kind of ghost-like, where they do not comment, they do not like, they do not share, they do not do any of those things. And I would just encourage anybody, I know it's hard to put yourself out there, even when you're not posting content. If you're just liking, if you're just retweeting, I've had people come up to me and say, hey, I really like that comment that you made on LinkedIn or on Twitter, or I really like this, or I like that. But I was like, well, but you didn't like anything of it. Well, I saw it. Yeah, I get, and that's great, and that's fine. If you can't like it, that's okay. But what I would encourage you to do is, if you do like something, it makes a difference if you like it or retweet it or comment on it or share it with somebody else. It makes a big difference for that person and for what they're trying to do to create content. And if you feel like they have genuine content, go out there and hit that like button. But to go back to it, the most important thing you can do is engage in the content on Twitter. I think it's needed more than ever. It is such a polarizing platform, and it is a lot of shouting going on. There is no doubt a lot of spam at all these social media platforms. Twitter's been around for a long time, and because of that, you just have a lot of spam out there. You have a lot of people just talking, and you have a lot of people not knowing how to quite use it yet. It takes time. Don't get me wrong. It takes a lot of time, but it's amazing that we've gotten clients from Twitter, but real clients, engaging clients, people we have a strong relationship with. We've met people. We've had people on our podcast. You can listen to what other influencers are saying on Twitter and engage with them. And next thing you know, if they comment or do something with your post, it'll lead to some good stuff for you. For example, Gary Vaynerchuk was talking about baseball cards recently. I made a comment on it and he retweeted it, and it got tons of likes and comments, and then that led to more conversations inside of that little micro community that he created. And there's a couple different people that we're talking to now as a result of that, of people being on our podcast, of people needing help with marketing. It's kind of cool how it can happen that fast, but you have to do it in the right way, and there's no doubt about it. It's just like anything else, you have to put the time in it, or you have to find people that can help you and put the time in it. But Twitter's a great platform if used properly. It was absolutely awesome sharing our thoughts on content marketing topics. From why SportsEpreneur exists to Twitter ideas, we hope your content marketing strategy takes off. The perspectives from this episode are now perspectives you as a business owner and entrepreneur can use for yourself. And for you to listen to this podcast, thank you. And for any entrepreneur with questions on marketing, feel free to send them our way. We would be happy to answer them on a future podcast, online or in person. If you have questions, feel free to reach out to me directly. You can find me on LinkedIn or contact me on Twitter and Instagram at Eric_Kaz. And you can check out all of our content by going to kazsource.com. Thank you for listening to our KazSource podcast, Entrepreneur Perspectives, building and protecting your business one podcast at a time. Until next time, we're out of here. This podcast exists in large part because of KazCM, the content marketing business inside KazSource Inc. KazCM is excited to bring the content marketing services used at KazSource to you. Learn more by visiting kazcm.com. Thank you so much for listening to this podcast. It's a big deal to us. We hope you found value in it. And if you did, we would be incredibly grateful if you gave us a review on iTunes. Remember to subscribe to this podcast and feel free to share it with anyone you know. More than anything, thank you again for listening. We appreciate it.